Hello and welcome to the Rank and Flank podcast. I'm your host, Finton. These are my co-hosts, Ben.
Howdy.
AJ.
Hello.
And Mark.
Hello.
And this is a very special and kind of sad episode in that this is probably going to be the last episode of the podcast that we record for the foreseeable future.
And now the end is near. Anyway.
Yeah.
We have kind of become upset with Old World, I think is the right word.
There's certainly strong and mixed feelings.
Yeah. And we wanted to go into why this is the last episode more than any other content for this one. Talk about what we liked about Old World, what we didn't like about it, and why we're stopping, for the most part, playing and talking about it in a podcast.
Yeah. And to be clear, not everybody has the same opinions. And we're going to kind of go around and talk about those and talk about what is that saying? One man's meat is another man's poison.
I've never heard that phrase.
You've never heard that phrase before? Back in my day, everybody knew that one.
Delicious turpentine.
Well,
as Jim Carrey's Grinch once said, one man's poisonous waste is another man's potpourri.
Yeah. So, let's talk about the poisonous waste and the potpourri. If you don't mind, the game came out about a year ago.
Just over a year now.
Just over a year.
Happy birthday.
And let's kind of do a State of the Union sort of thing. So in that time, we got at the start we got two armies released in box sets with the rulebook. That was the Bretonnians and the Tomb Kings,
and very quickly
two Arcane
the Arcane
Journals.
Yeah.
Yep. And then that was followed up with, I think the first one was the Orcs and Goblins, I want to say.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, Orcs and Goblins, and then Dwarves, and then
Chaos.
Warriors, yep.
Yeah.
And then Empire.
Which we have not covered.
We've not covered. It just came out before Christmas, and now we know High Elves are about to come out. But in that time, we've got 6 of the 9 factions.
I think it's just High Elves, Beastmen, and then Wood Elves, and that's it.
That's it.
Yep.
And then we've had 4 FAQ updates.
Yeah, FAQ/errata updates.
Yep.
One roadmap.
One road. Yeah. And I think.
And one comment about flagellants.
Yes.
Poor JTY.
We've had a bunch of miniatures released, plastic kits come back from predominantly from 8th edition, 7th edition.
The later stuff, because the
later
molds still
stuff.
exist.
Yep. And then in some cases, they've gone way back and reproduced some of the metal miniatures as made to order.
And some of them have even come back as resin, which is really nice.
Yep.
Yeah. Those Empire Ogres that came out look old as hell.
Yeah.
The Imperial ones.
Imperial Ogres, yeah.
Yes.
I love them.
I
Yeah.
think they might be from the 80s.
Even
Yeah.
those Badlands ogres were very old,
Yeah, they were old too.
and the dwarf prince, his stuff was very old.
Ogres have been
Yeah.
in since the start of the game, and they've always been pretty much irrelevant for most armored armies.
So it's been a pretty busy year. A lot of things got delayed because of the launch of AOS
Whatever it is.
version.next,
Skaven Tide, yeah.
Skaven Tide, yeah.
Yeah.
And that kind of slowed down the old world stuff. But it's been going apace, and there's been a lot of organized play across the world, and a bunch of even pretty decent online tournaments because of Warhol enabling that sort of thing. So we have 2 builders that everybody is using, right? There's Old World Builder
And New
Recruit.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of folks are using also New Recruit for tournament organization, or else using Best Coast pairings. So there's a lot of tools out there that are helping to support the community, and then there's some massive online groups for people to be part of, right? There's some really big Discord channels.
Yeah, the Facebook groups are the big ones, I think.
And the Facebook groups are huge, yeah.
Yeah.
And overwhelmingly so.
Overwhelmingly toxic as well.
As with all things big community, yeah.
Yeah, if you enjoy your hobby, don't go there. Just
Yeah.
don't.
I curse you with your hobby becoming mainstream.
So yeah, that's kind of where we're at. And here in Ireland, we started off with a 1,000 point tournament in, I think it was March.
I think it was March, yeah.
And we had eight tournaments throughout the year, 2 of which were 2-day GTs, and the rest were 1-dayers. Of those 1-dayers, I think 4 were 2,000 points, and the other 2, maybe 3 were only 2,000. 3 or 4 were 2,000 points, and the other ones were kind of ramping up from 1,000, 1,500, and then I think it was 1,000, 1,500, and then 2,000. I'm not sure, but Fintan and I went to 7 of the 8 tournaments.
Tournaments, not other organized events.
Yeah, there was other organized play, like the Pale Wargamers organized Paloozas,
Yeah.
and I think a couple of other game stores around the country. And
Matt did the thing in Wicklow, didn't he? Or was that a group effort?
Yeah, that was the Last Chancers had a thing in Wicklow.
That was awesome. I love that.
The Dundalk Gaming Club ran a campaign. I think the Lisburn Gaming Club also ran a campaign.
Is there something in Kildare? I want to say there was something there.
Yeah, there's a gaming club there that ran. I don't know if they were running a campaign or just playing casually, but there was a lot of play across the country. And the community exists. It's here. It's vibrant. It's small, but this is Ireland. There's only so many people in the country, and I don't know about you guys, but I feel like Ireland seems to shun its nerds really hard compared to other places that I've lived.
Just because there's not as many stores, I think,
I don't know.
for these sorts of things.
Maybe I'm just overly sensitive about it.
I used to play D&D in a pub here, and I never got any flack in Dublin, in the north side of Dublin.
Dublin's a little different. It's like a different country almost.
Yeah, but that would be like what people would consider like a rough part of Ireland, and people would just be like, "Oh, what are you doing? That's cool."
Yeah,
and then buy you a drink, and then it's like I haven't had that experience here at all. But I think one thing that Ireland can boast is it has like the friendliest, nicest gaming community.
That's true.
I've been involved in a lot of them, different countries, and there's always like some stupid drama, or everyone's like way too competitive. But in Ireland, it's like, no, you play how you want to play, and you have fun, and everyone's nice to you. And it's like you shake hands after and you go get food. It's nice.
The play how you want to play is true for 90% of the time, but there is that top group of players who will, sacrifice everything for just the big tournament win.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be true everywhere.
Yes, I agree. I just don't want to make it seem like everyone in Ireland plays soft.
Yeah, I don't think they play soft. There's definitely some people who are more competitive, but like in 40k, for example, or like when we used to go to 40k events, it would be just like everyone was like that. Like you just would not have fun because every single game there'd be something.
Because you're playing 40k?
That comes up, pretty much, yeah.
It's easy enough to find the videos on YouTube of how people play at some of the top competitive events.
Oh, like the guy who flushed his dice down the toilet. Have you heard that one?
The guy who
failed to flush his dice down the toilet because they were weighted.
I think the most famous one was something like one guy wouldn't let this guy do take backs, and then in the next round of the next game or whatever, it turns out the guy who lost the game, who wasn't allowed to do the take back, was playing was his friend, and that guy did not let him do the take backs, which caused the original non take backer to lose the game. So a lot of poor sportsmanship stuff that way. People definitely don't like that, and it's not good to need to do that to win.
Generally, against Irish players, they'll let you take things back for the most part.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I think that's predominantly true. I think my experience at tournaments has been it's been very gentlemanly, and that folks have been here. I'm trying to do this. I want it to be roughly this far away. Let's talk about how it is and make sure we agree upon it. And
it's play by intention, they call that, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think in an imprecise game like Warhammer, that's almost essential.
Let's play in complete silence and get mad at each other when we disagree on how something is measured.
Yeah. Okay, so that's kind of the state of the game as a whole. That's kind of the state of the game in Ireland. There's clubs dotted all over the country that are playing. The last Ben, you put together a map of all of the Warhammer
sort of clubs shops,
and shops,
yeah.
and then the Last Chancers guys kind of took that and expanded upon it for all role-playing, wargaming.
Yeah.
So there's a very comprehensive map now of the whole sort of Irish gaming community on the Last Chancers website, which is, really neat, a really good resource for folks that are trying to find games.
And it's really nice that Old World helped spawn that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And brought more of the community together to meet each other.
For sure.
To come play games and, find other people to play games with. Which it's a really nice, spark for that.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's been great.
That's my main positive of Old World, is that it has brought people together. The real Old World was the friends we made along the way.
And I will say the Old World community, demographic wise, is there's more older people that are sort of just there to have fun, dusting off their old sort of 1990s.
Used to play this
Goblin
game when you were a
Green.
teenager.
Yeah, where it's you don't get that in other war games as much. You're not really.
I remember seeing someone brought for Warriors Chaos. I talked to him once. It was he had a bunch of really, really old Chaos stuff. The older Dragon Ogres, none of this plastic crap. Keep that away from me. Everything metal. It was beautiful and really silly looking. Massive heads and tiny torsos. Oh,
That's the Warhammer look right there.
yes, I love that heroic, scalish stuff taken to the extreme.
Yeah. So, should we talk about some of the good stuff in terms of the gameplay? Right. We talked about the community. We talked about kind of the game release.
The bases are square.
The bases are square. Yeah.
Everything square must come round.
Well, that's interesting because the bases are square, but they're bigger.
Yeah.
How did everybody feel about that?
I didn't notice too much of a difference personally. It made the models a lot more comfortable on the bases and made them more good looking, with the exception of goblins. It made them easier to rank up, is the main thing.
I like that. Yeah.
But the downside is that it had infantry blocks, particularly infantry blocks, take up more space on the table, so it's harder to get more of them in.
Yep.
Which is one of the compounding parts of one of my big problems with Old World, which we'll get to later.
So it's an extra 5 mil on each base, each infantry base. So
It adds an extra 1 or 2 models width to any given unit.
Yeah.
I tend to agree. I liked having a bit more space.
It was annoying having to rebase everything.
Says the guy that didn't really rebase it.
Hey, I rebased a whole bunch of my warriors.
I think it was, and I think a lot of people just went for the base shoes, right? The adapters.
Yep.
Or else the movement trays, right? To kind of do the same thing.
Yeah.
With the models getting so much bigger these days, it is also very helpful.
Yeah.
A lot of the models in 8th edition just did not fit on a base they're supposed to fit on and rank up at the same time.
Yeah.
Particularly the warriors, I think. They were so tight.
Yeah. A lot of the sort of the heavy infantry models really struggled on even on a 25 mil base.
Or anything with spears.
Yep.
And certainly the Wood Elf archers on the 20 mil base, because they've got this massive cloak
And a huge
and
bow.
a huge bow. I think overall the change of base size was a positive thing.
I agree, but I prefer to keep everything on the older bases anyway. I know what the problems are, trying to put, say, bloodletters, the plastic ones, or to use certain types of spears. There's a specific spear I haven't used for any of my Dark Elves because it does not work with the smaller base size. It just doesn't fit, and it looks kind of weird too, so I just don't use them. I prefer having everything look all bunched up. I think goblins look a little bit weird when they're spaced out like that, but it is better to make just for easy use. I mean, do you guys remember when Space Marines used to come on 28 or 25 mil bases?
Yes.
With
Teeny
the
tiny Space
feet
Marines.
hanging over the edges.
Yeah,
that does not look good if you're introducing someone to a system.
Or Terminators on the same bases.
Terminators were on the same base.
Oh.
Yep.
And they were huge. Like, they had their heels on the base, and that's about it.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think overall that was a positive.
And I think that if we do move to another system, we'll probably just end up keeping the same bases on the models.
Yeah, I'm not rebasing.
Yeah, don't even. That would be like, okay, well, I've got 4 25mm bases, so technically that's 5 20 bases.
Yeah. No,
So
thanks.
it's like, yeah, there's a phantom model in there. I don't know.
No, just everyone use the same bases, and you're fine.
Yeah.
I think maybe it's just the templates are only really affected negatively. Other than that.
Templates are affected a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think templates.
Let's talk about templates.
Yeah, templates are one of the misses for me in terms of the game.
Quite literally in half the cases.
Yeah, I think honestly, anytime you see anything that has a template, it just kind of I kind of groan because they're so
Terrible.
inconsistent. Yeah. I mean, templates used to be one of the most fun parts of the game. In fact, when I switched from playing 8th to playing Kings of War, one of the things that I really missed when I went to Kings of War was that there were no templates.
No, there were reasons for that.
Right.
Particularly
It's
because
very
people argue about it.
Right. Sure. I mean, that doesn't the current template system doesn't really. I guess maybe it stops the arguments a bit.
Yeah, because they're so bad, and one additional 4-up doesn't matter
Doesn't
nearly
really
as much
matter.
as one automatic hit
Yeah,
does.
exactly.
Especially when every template spell that isn't Pillar of Fire, which doesn't care anyway, is so incredibly weak.
Yeah.
That isn't like Column of Crystal.
Well, Column of Crystal isn't a template damage spell,
Yeah.
and Pillar of Fire is a template spell only in that it has a marker that moves around.
Yes.
Yeah.
It doesn't actually cover anything.
Like Fiery Convocation, awful spell.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or the Flame Cannon, I
Yeah.
think is like
Yeah.
the most disappointing
or
example for me.
every breath weapon.
Yeah.
Breath weapons are so bad.
And you can't use them in combat anymore.
Yeah. Which was the whole selling point of the breath weapon in the first place.
Yeah.
It's like, why would you not be able to breathe on something?
Too
that you're
busy
also-
biting.
Apparently.
You gotta
so.
breathe through your nose. You need the nose breath weapon template. It's 2 small flames.
I'd find it hard to argue against that being a miss for the old world. Even as someone who does love the game, I think like it's just a bummer that certain artillery I can't really take. The Hellstorm rocket battery is just bad anyway, but I would love to play that.
Hellstorm rocket battery has never been very good.
Yeah, but it's basically unusable.
Absolutely
Same with the
unusable,
mortar.
yeah.
Same with the flame cannon. Any sort of flame template spell, it's kind of a bummer. So,
Yeah. I agree.
I mean, the annoying thing about what are they called? Rock lobbers.
Yep. Stone throwers.
Stone thrower weapons is you're not really taking it for the template. You're taking it for the hole in the middle.
Yes.
So whereas you don't really care about anything that's not around the hole,
Yes.
because the chances are you're not wounding it. So it's kind of like an indirect cannon in that sense that
Right.
people are using it as, which is kind of a bummer.
Well, the bummer part about it is if you're hitting something that's bigger than the template, you're only hitting it on a 4-up.
Yeah,
Or the
that's
whole
silly.
yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. Even because you place the hole directly over the model, but because it's not completely covered.
If it has a central hole, then it will hit
Automatically
anyway.
hit, yeah.
Oh, it does.
Yeah, it hits
Yeah.
the model under the hole. But for flame templates, which don't have a hole, they
Yeah.
don't automatically hit anything.
So bad.
They're
Yeah.
so awful.
Yeah.
They really should, I think, just get rid of the whole 4-up thing and just say, even if you're partially under it, it counts as a hit.
So that's how it was in 8th edition.
Yeah.
But this led to a million arguments every time a template was used where, oh, is that one under? How many are under here? Because it mattered so much more. Because the template spells were also so impactful in 8th edition.
Yeah.
Where you had Purple Sun with every model that touches.
I haven't played a single game of 8th, and I've already heard of how infamous this is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Purple Sun of Xerxes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was Xerius.
Xerius.
Xerius?
Yeah.
Purple Sun, Pit of Shades, even Flaming Head hurt really bad.
Yeah.
And those were all template spells that mattered how many you hit in a moving template. So you couldn't even just do the math on centered. You'd have to
Move it through.
and then estimate.
I personally, I mean, again, this could be playing with intention. I never had a lot of problems with template arguments. It's like, okay, the template goes through, it hits all of these guys. These 4 or 5 are question marks. opponent, you go ahead and decide which ones it hits.
And even then, you can choose to 4-up them.
Yeah, exactly. At the worst case. So yeah, I think the templates really got nerfed a bit too hard.
Yeah. It's compounding with the fact that spaces got bigger and infantry got so much worse.
That's a good next topic. Is
Absolutely.
Yeah, that is. I mean, with rare exceptions like dwarfs, and
who have to take infantry.
Yeah, but their infantry is pretty good, to be honest.
Because it has to be, otherwise the faction doesn't exist.
Yeah. And what other armies use infantry a lot, quite effectively?
High elves use infantry occasionally.
High elves, yeah.
Yeah, but not currently.
Yeah.
Orcs and goblins.
Goblins, yeah. Goblin bricks are pretty good.
But Skaven, like...
They don't exist.
They clearly. I mean, they nerfed them so hard that they never leave the Under Empire anymore.
Because Skaven Tide was coming out. That's the only reason that Skaven are so bad in Old World, because they don't want cross-compatibility between models and game systems anymore.
I mean, that's really what we have to infer, right?
I mean, that's why they're getting rid of demons as a faction from 40k.
Are they?
They are, yeah.
When was that announced?
A couple of, I think it was like last month.
Oh, wow,
really?
I didn't know that. That was my army.
Yeah,
Gosh.
demons are just becoming part of Chaos Marines.
Yes, they're doing that with Emperor's Children. They're showing up in like all the pictures. There's all demonettes, and there's the Keeper of Secrets next to the new Emperor's Children.
And they're dropping off. Demons aren't getting a codex. They're getting just their index, and then they're not going to come back for 11th, it looks like.
That's shit.
Oh, that's so lame. That was my army. Okay.
Yeah, and the reason they're doing that is because they don't want demons being used in 3 different systems. Because right now, demons are usable in 3 different systems.
Yeah, that was like the selling point of the army. It's the only reason people played them, to be fair.
Right. In AOS now, they are. I think they've split them. I don't.
They're not their own army. They're in the Hedonites of Sun and Ash.
Yeah.
Yes. Something of Khorne and the
the faction specific ones. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't actually know they split them up that way too. Because I was looking at them earlier on. I was trying to get base size, and I was like, why is everything in Hedonites of Slaanesh?
They've gone back to
Slaanesh. Sorry.
The split up and summon system from way older editions. Like that's how it was in 2nd edition 40k.
Yeah.
But that's not what we're talking about here.
No, but it's an interesting digression.
Yeah.
So the infantry blocks is kind of where we're at. Infantry are so difficult to win with.
There were
I guess,
a million tiny things that seem good on paper, and then when you add them all up, it makes a formula for making infantry useless in most armies.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cav being really good.
And getting fallback in good order, which then makes Cav better.
Yep. Monsters being really good. Combat res not being that effective. I mean,
there being no objectives and just being kill points in 90% of games, even in tournaments.
It's at a point where it's like you should, if you're playing an Empire army, when you see the pictures of the Empire, what do you see pictures of? It's state troops.
Blocks of state troops.
Big lots of state troops. Guys being like, for the Emperor.
Yeah.
And that's what they say in 40k. I guess they say it in Old World as well.
They say it in Old World. Fantasy, yeah.
For Nuln.
For Sigma.
Nuln, yeah. But in order to play them, and like I would struggle to find an Empire player who disagrees with this. It's like handicapping yourself is by fielding state troops. Literally, it's in the Norn army of infamy. It is a tax. You have a state troop tax.
You have to take halberdiers who are absolutely useless.
And missile troops, and it's like in order to play this army and get these cool rules, you have to take these crappy little guys, and that doesn't feel good. Nobody wants to do that.
Yep.
They want to be able to build around their big army of guys and have numbers win the day and tactics, but you just can't do that because they're overcosted, they're bad. Infantry as a whole don't really have a way of fighting back against dragons. I've tried it. I've tried the static combat res.
Me too.
It's just like, yeah, right. So it takes a lot of fun out of the edition. And
So another big thing is lack of supporting attacks and addition of step up taking away your attack. That's the really big thing that I think killed infantry.
Yeah, not getting the hit back at all with the guys you spent ages painting.
You have just 10 guys in your front rank. A unit in Old World that is like a dragon, for example, can pretty easily kill 8 or more of those guys, no matter what they are, which makes your strike back useless against a dragon who can stack saves. Shall we talk about that next?
No. Well, let's talk about the infantry.
I
think that is definitely part of it, right? You're losing your attacks. The static combat res is very difficult to stack up. With the units being wider, it makes it harder to do the sort of hammer and anvil, get the multiple charge off quite so easily, because they didn't really make the monster bases any bigger.
The monster base is the same size because they don't want people to rebase their monsters, which is a single model.
Well, also because a lot of the monsters came with, especially more recent plastic kits, came with like specifically molded bases to that size.
Which GW doesn't sell.
Right. I think the other big problem with infantry is that once it's the cavalry problem you were just mentioning.
Yeah.
It's the continuously being charged, because you lose 5 guys in your first charge, and normally, or not normally, but in previous editions, you would either get to attack back, or you would be steadfast and not run away
because you had more guys.
Because you have more guys or whatever else. In this case, they've somewhat modeled that. You have the fallback in good order versus give ground.
But because fallback in good order is written so horribly and has so many stupid things about it, like not being able to reform if you give ground, but you do get to reform if you fall back in good order, and fallback in good order counting as a flee move, so they then get to charge after you.
That's the real thing.
Which makes lances work essentially as great weapons.
Right. You end up not being able to bog down the cavalry, which is wonderful from a simulation standpoint, but very frustrating. If you want to try and create that effect, then cavalry need to cost significantly more than they do compared to the cost of infantry,
which they don't.
Right. Right. And that's really where the problems start to come in. Things are poorly pointed for what they do on the battlefield.
Right now, infantry have to either cost half what they currently do, which would make them need to be fielded in such huge numbers as to be impractical in terms of what GW sees. Because one of the big complaints with 8th edition was the armies had to be so big, and they wanted to avoid that. Or cavalry have to be so expensive. And having expensive cavalry means people buy fewer models.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't mind as much, I think.
Yeah. At what the upshot of that is, because everything is based off of kill points, right? The victory points that you score for killing the unit. It then behooves you to take as small a unit of infantry as possible.
Mm.
So this then makes it so that what you're seeing on the battlefield is 1 to 3 monsters, small units of cavalry that hit hard, but there's only 5 usually, or 6, maybe 7 in the it's 1 rank of cavalry.
Yeah.
And then similarly, like 5 guys of infantry. There, you'll get maybe 5 or 6 units of archers. Instead of having 1 unit of 30 archers, you've got your archers all spread out in tiny units, because that gives up fewer points when they inevitably die. But it makes them more maneuverable and lets you run away a bit better. And
also lets you abuse the new skirmishers.
Yeah. Well, skirmishers are a whole...
They have a problem.
Different ball of wax. So, look, I just to kind of draw a line onto the infantry thing, I think I love playing with infantry blocks. The reason that the podcast is called Rank and Flank is because I want to have ranks and I want to charge in the flanks. This is that maneuvering and the ability to think ahead and plan out where your models are going to be.
That's Warhammer.
Is Warhammer. Creating the battle lines and having some units that can, be a bit more maneuverable and do more than just the battle line is great and fun and dynamic. But when that is kind of the standard army that you're seeing on the battlefield, period, then you're really just playing 40K or Age of Sigmar or any of those other kind of skirmishy games.
Which is really, that feeling is not helped at all by the skirmishers. Skirmishers in previous editions were basically you had a normal block of whatever unit, only they had 1 base space in between them. So you'd have like a checkerboard pattern essentially of infantry. Well, not quite, but you'd have spaced out infantry. They would work exactly like all other infantry in terms of movement. They wouldn't have any rules conflicts. Whenever they get charged, they bunch up on the target unit, or on the charging unit.
Basically, in 8th edition, skirmishers were kind of open order, how
Yes.
open order works now, more or less.
And now, skirmishers are on round bases for all intents and purposes. Skirmishers have the ability to move in every direction, which breaks a lot of things about how Warhammer is fundamentally designed. They have the ability to shoot in all directions, and they have so many silly rules things that don't need to be there because of the way that having not connected models works in a game about big blocks of guys.
Yeah. Look, I think actually, yeah. So leaving aside the kind of the rules difficulties or ambiguities of blocks of skirmishers or units of skirmishers, I actually think that is not such a big deal. The really big deal is where you can have a very heavy hitting character being a skirmisher and thus having a massive threat range in every direction on the battlefield, right?
The 360 charge arc is so nasty.
Yeah, Peg Knights is the big one that comes to mind. Like,
Yep.
not even just characters, like Peg Knights on their own are kind
The
of like...
fact that
Right.
Peg Knights are
Yeah.
skirmishers in the first place is bonkers, especially when they can charge in 360 degrees and move in 360 degrees
And
with
fly.
such a strong hitting unit. Like,
Yeah.
Pegasus Knights hit hard.
Yep.
They are...
And it's not just them, right? I mean, it's anything that flies, really. And there's like pretty much every army has something that can kind of fall into this category. Certainly in the Wood Elves, it was the Great Stag rider.
The Goth BSB.
Yeah. In other armies, there's usually something that can fly that can hit reasonably hard.
you look at me like, oh, no.
Empire and dwarves, sorry.
No, not unless they give like a demigriff wings.
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
Gyrocopters.
Gyrocopters are...
They're very good.
But they're close order. Like, they were not skirmishers.
Are they not?
No, they're close order. Yeah,
Close
I think
order.
you're right.
Oh, weird.
Yeah. No, that's proper.
Yeah.
So, I think what that then means is that 360 arc, without really sacrificing much in terms of hitting power, then again affects the meta. Why would you take something that doesn't give you that?
Yeah.
And a really simple example from the Wood Elves, just because I'm so familiar with them, is the Warhawk versus the Great Eagle.
The Great Eagle is a worse choice in almost every situation.
Right. It is close order. And the only thing you really get from it is
One extra wound?
you get one extra wound.
Yeah, and one extra attack, I think.
Yes, I think so. But it's more points, and you're now close order instead of being a skirmisher.
Which means you have to look at what you want to hit, which is super duper punishing, especially for wizards.
You also then, I suppose, technically have a flank and a rear rank
Yep.
to also get bonuses. Yeah.
Yep.
So your enemy's skirmishing character can charge you in the rear.
Yeah.
And now you've lost all of your charge bonuses
Yep.
Yep.
and gotten a -2 combat res.
Yep. And they're probably going to hit you first.
Yeah, because they charged you.
Yeah. So
Well, though you are an elf on a character, so...
it's
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
It's true. Yeah. So I think that to me, I don't mind so much the units, although I did get very frustrated after a while with moving all of my scouts, my dryads, my war dancers, everything model by model.
Yeah, it was Wood Elves.
With the
So,
Wood
yeah,
Elves
yep.
specifically, and I love my Wood Elves, and I was just like, I don't want to play this anymore, which is why I put the High Elves together.
When I took over playing the Wood Elves, I ended up just moving them into vaguely the right position and saying, yeah, they're good enough. If you want me to spend the extra 30 minutes of the game
Yep.
moving these models, you can make me, but it's going to be the same either way.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that indicates to me bad game design.
I had the same thing with Brian in the GT. Like we were talking about, I think it was the Sisters of Avalon. He's like, "Look, I can either just put him down here, or," and I was like, "Yeah, no, don't worry about it. I trust you. Like, just put them down. We'll say they're whatever inches or millimeters apart." Like,
but some opponents won't let you do that, which then bogs down the game.
Yeah,
And it's just a negative play experiences both sides, right?
The fact that you have to specifically avoid playing the rules as the rules are written indicates a flaw in the rule, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a fair statement.
yeah. Like some people are saying that because skirmishers don't have a flank or a rear now, technically everything is their everything's their front arc. But if their front arc is taken up by another model, which it will be if it got charged, then
How do you charge them in the side?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's like no, sorry, my front arc is being taken up over here by this melee. You go charge something else.
That's a dumb argument.
Yeah, it is, but people can make them now.
I'll charge them in their side front arc.
The port arc. So we've been being a bit of a negative Nancy's about all this. I think that we should definitely take a look at the positive things about Old World more as well.
I like to think of myself more as a Negasaurus Rex.
Poor lizardman. Positive.
Mark.
Yep. It actually being back is huge for me. I back in the day, I never actually got a chance to really get into Warhammer. Back in 8th and all that, I didn't really know many people who played Warhammer outside of 40k. I didn't really know many clubs or anything like that. I didn't know where to get started with army building. Now we live in the age of the internet where the old world exists and there's plenty of support for whatever it is you want. I'm just happy it's back. Really happy. Yeah. What do you guys think?
I mean, just like the rank and flank Discord server, there's like 200 people in there now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, people are still talking. I feel like, there's people talking in there all the time. It might not be 200. You can double check that. It might be like 150.
That's bullshit. It's like, we're not going to be doing this for a while, so maybe it's 3,000.
Yeah. Oh yeah, who cares? Say whatever number we want. But
we will keep the Discord server open.
Yeah,
absolutely.
The Rank and Flank Discord server is still a great place to come. You should join it.
Yeah, it's very positive. There's never any fights in there.
10,000
people hanging out, sharing pictures are there.
The worst it gets is a rules disagreement, which is very civil.
Yeah,
and generally, it's a great place to come and talk about all sorts of different things, but primarily Old World.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it is 175. So
it's pretty good.
Close, yeah.
That including the bots.
Yeah, probably includes the bots.
Yeah. There's like 2 bots in that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
2 whole bots. Huh?
That's what I'd say is almost 200, and
Yeah.
it's pretty active. There's loads of people in there from all over the world, and people are just excited to have the game back. And also, if you like this setting, and you're someone like me who likes Warhammer Fantasy roleplay,
All of us.
yeah, or all of us, yeah, this is where you get your models now, because back then you'd have to go and I remember I was like looking for like militia on eBay that I could use for Uber's Right Guard, but now I could just buy a box of militia.
Yeah, like holy shit, that's such a good feeling. I mean, I'd have to go to like scour eBay. I mean, you can buy the brand new stuff for ridiculous amounts, or you can do what I did and try to buy really shitty, a child painted this with enamel paints crap where there's glue all over it and whatnot, and it's in French because maybe they don't know that it's Warhammer or whatever, and like
Le Amer du Bois.
I know more French now than I did during the Leaving Cert. I think miliciens is how you say it in Italian. I'm going to stop, but you get the idea. And now you can just buy fucking 32 of them for like less than 70 quid. It's ideal. It's great. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's
buy
great.
some.
Well, and I think that it was kind of how they expected when they launched, where it's like, we don't know how many people are going to actually play this game, but we know that people really want the models, so let's bring the models back.
Yeah.
And that's why almost every news post has been, here, look at all the cool models we're bringing back. Also, here's the rules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's strange though they did not start with the stuff that was extremely in demand that could not be bought anymore. Militia chiefly, some of the high elf stuff for sure. I think
A large part of that is that they don't have the molds anymore, because molds degrade with time.
yeah.
And if they're not keeping them well preserved, then they will the grade, and they won't be able to be used anymore. So they have to go back and recast or resculpt them.
Like Jesus Christ, do you remember the I think it was Pegasus Knights or Bretonian Horsemen, whose the horse heads look like dicks.
Yeah.
Like, for fuck's sake. How does that pass quality control?
But I mean, on the topics of models, I really like a lot of the models they've done for the old world. Like, top of my head, just because it's all I've been thinking about lately, is the Empire Wizards. If you haven't seen them, there's like a Necromancer one, there's a Elemental one, and the other one is a
Battle Mage, right?
Battle Mage, yeah. And they come with these cool familiars, and I think they're doing something similar for Beastmen, where they're bringing out a wizard with a familiar, and they just look incredible.
They're super flavorful as well.
Yeah, really, really cool. And I mean, it's lore-wise, it's kind of strange to have wizards in the Empire at this time, but we don't talk about that because they look so cool.
Yeah.
And there's some other good examples. Who was the dwarf guy?
Kian?
No, not Kian. the engineer.
Burlock.
Burlock Namundsen, his model's awesome.
Yeah.
The Tomb King dragon is awesome. I think that won like Model of the Year, right, in some Games Workshop poll.
Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
I mean, it's the one properly new model we've gotten, or like the biggest one anyway.
Yeah, it's a big one.
And it's a very pretty dragon. And I love the crocodile theming of it. I think it's super duper cool. How can it fly? It has no wings.
Magic. Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Like the models are wonderful. Having them back, having them come out onto the market again. Not just the new ones coming out, but people digging out their old ones and going, "Oh, I don't want these anymore, but I am getting into it, so I'll trade you for your goblins or whatever else." Right? It's just nice to have that sort of collector's enthusiasm around.
Again, it's sparking conversation between people over the hobby aspect of things, which is really good. And again, the best old world was the friends we made along the way.
Yeah. And I painted another army, right? I finished the High Elves army, and
We've had for 10 years, yeah.
Since
eighth.
Since eighth, I had half a High Elf army, and I got the other half and finished it up, and
nice.
I'm very happy with it.
It looks excellent.
Yeah, I mean, I think. Go ahead.
Nothing will motivate you to properly paint an army like having a game to play will.
Right, exactly. In fact, that's about the only thing that motivates me. Is one of the reasons I like tournaments is because if I want to put a new unit on the table, I'm not going to put it down as grey plastic. And I don't think I've ever brought grey plastic to a Warhammer tournament. I
cannot say that because...
Oh yeah, you had like your Tomb Kings.
Yeah, but I wanted to play the Tomb Kings, and there was a lot wrong with the Tomb Kings.
Oh, they are my least. If we're talking about things we don't like about the game, my number one on that list is Tomb Kings. I just can't stand them.
I actually agree. Like, if you look at, we talked a little bit earlier about the online tournaments, right? There was that big square-based, the S-Bot one. And I think out of the top 16...
I think 10 were Mork Cult.
I think it might be 8 were Tomb Kings.
8 were Tomb Kings. Yeah. One of them was Royal Hosts, but the other 7 were Mork Cult.
Was he running the 170 man block list?
I have no idea.
Which is a thing you can do in Old World.
Yeah, he was. That was what he was running. Yeah. There was some grand armies in there, but basically Tomb Kings, most of the armies play the same way unless you're doing the big block of just... You're not having fun this game.
Yeah.
It's not like a skill thing. All you have to do is avoid being charged in the flanks, and you just stand there and heal yourself and cast really good spells.
Yeah,
and
that can't really be dispelled because you're adding like a +8 or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the magic? I want to talk about the magic. I've been dying to talk to you about the magic all day.
Well, let's talk about the magic.
Yep.
I think there are positive and negative things about the magic, and I'm going to start with the positive because I know we're going to shit on it in a minute. I think the thing I don't as much as I loved the magic phase in 8th, I actually kind of like that magic is spread out through the phases and that it's very clear and obvious. These are the shooting attack ones. These are the movement ones.
Yeah.
It's nice and straightforward. Now it comes with its own tactical challenges, like trying to get your guys in place to be able to cast your enchantment or your hex. Thinking that far ahead where you're going to have to wait for your opponent to take their turn and then you're going to hex them or enchant them. That has its own, sort of tactical thought process that you're going to have to go through, which I kind of like.
Yeah.
I see the vision with Old World's magic system.
The spells and how they have kind of created them let it down a little bit. There's a large lore imbalance, and I think that was my first sort of
Compare
impact.
dark magic to demonology, and it's like night and day with how strong they are.
Or even high magic to anything else. But the number one thing is just how powerful a level 4 wizard is compared to every other level of wizard.
Absolutely.
He's not just 25% better than a level 3 like it kind of used to be.
You kind of works
like
with them.
He's doing a
Yeah.
lot of dispelling.
200% better than every other wizard, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
For mostly the same points.
I would agree that the accessibility of it is a positive. It feels really natural woven into the rest of the game because it's like, right, I'm going to shoot my guys, and then I'm going to shoot my wizard, and then I'm going to move my guys, and I'm going to cast my movement thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Conveyance
so-
spells are really good in the movement phase. Having
Yeah.
movement spells be cast during the movement phase is a huge improvement over, I think, over 8th edition, where any movement spell, there weren't really that many.
They happened in the magic phase.
They happened in the magic phase, which was after the movement phase, which felt a little bit
So
awkward.
it's a little bit like giving things reserve move or something like that. So
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't like reserve move.
we can now move our sarcophagi.
I would also disagree about there being a massive imbalance in the laws. I think there's arguments to be made for all of them. Like elementalism, there's some good spells in that. It just depends on the army that you're playing. Illusion's fantastic. Battle magic's fantastic.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
I'm looking at high magic.
Right.
In particular, it has a couple of spells that are good, and the rest that are really quite poorly written. Like it has spells that end at the end of your own turn, as opposed to at the start of your next turn, like every other lore.
Yeah. that's
Here
a
is
big
this buff that you can only use on the turn that you charge. So, stuff like that.
I
Just
did learn that
kind of frustrates.
Demonic Vessel is that way, but that's because it's a stupidly strong buff. +1 attack and +1 strength and +1 AP is really, really strong. So it ends at the end of your turn rather than at the start of your next turn, which is understandable.
But you also have fighty wizards in
You do,
in that
yeah.
army. So
Yeah.
One thing I really do like about Old World, just to deviate from the magic just for a moment, I really like the separation of strength and AP and having no 1-up armor saves.
Yep.
I think that's just a complete improvement over 8th edition,
Yep.
and I like it a lot better.
Agreed.
It is. I think the way they used to do the whole thing of, I think the higher strength equals
More AP,
negatives to AP. That's like, it feels more RPG-ish, I think, than giving something a piece of equipment that represents that and abstracting it that way. So like maybe that's why they used to do it that old way, and now this is like, now that it's an actual war game, now they have more experience, now they're going to do it a way that makes more sense.
It's definitely where the roots lie, is in the ability to bring your Warhammer Fantasy roleplay character into Old World, into fantasy, or being able to bring whatever into fantasy and having a chart to tell you this is how much AP it has.
Yeah, and it also lets you do stuff like, let's say, okay, you don't want to use the claws or something like that. Let's say you want to, for some reason, make your guy a little bit like stay in the melee or something for longer. Maybe you want to use his elbows.
Maybe narratively something has
smack him.
happened
Yeah.
to make him weaker, and then
Yeah, exactly. So
That's
he has to
how it
use his hand
works.
weapon or something like that,
Yeah.
Instead of just, using his full strength and just destroying the guy's armor no matter what he does. Maybe he's trying to tickle him, but now his armor's useless for that, or I don't know.
having high strength, low AP is an interesting option that is opened up by Old World system,
Yep.
which wasn't an option before. Anyway, back to magic. I think we should, there are definitely positives to the magic system, but there are a lot of negatives. In my opinion, the biggest one is that the magic is so weak compared to 8th edition.
Well,
8th edition was huge, but
Yeah.
even editions before that, compared to every fantasy edition, I think Old World has pretty much the weakest magic out there. Every single one of the magic missiles, with few exceptions, is really, really not powerful. Most of the buffs aren't that impactful. The main ones that are impactful are the conveyance spells. But there's so many spells that are just complete stinkers, like Doom Bolt or anything with a template.
A lot of stuff is just some of the lores. They have spells that do very different things and don't feel like they synergize well at all, which makes me think that why don't they just do what they used to do in older 40k and let you buy spells for different points cost and just leave it a day. I never like randomized spells. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. I don't see how it ever could. I mean, why would you have different spells at the start of this battle and then another set the next
right?
one?
So whatever the winds
Well,
are.
what it's
would
meant
you
to be
forget?
is the spell the wizard knows. You're buying a different wizard every game.
Okay.
Yeah.
That kind of makes sense. I mean, I think part of the spells not feeling powerful, like specifically magic missiles, is a target diversity thing, being that magic missiles would be a lot better, and this argument also applies to like strength 4 shooting, for example, like your handgunners or your crossbowmen. That stuff would be a lot better if there was more targets that were affected by that on the table.
The game was designed with infantry being strong in mind and not with infantry being strong being a thing they had to consider during the design process. It was designed as if infantry being strong and present on the battlefield was the default of the game, and everything else was going to be built around that, and that created an environment where infantry could not succeed, which has destroyed so much of the balance of the game that it was assumed to have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I wonder, is it? I mean, when did they first mention Old World? Like what, before 2020?
8 years ago, 7 years ago.
There were
something like
leaks,
that. There were-
Yeah. So, like, you know, you'd have to wonder, was someone working on this for so long that they would work on one section, then work on another section, have these assumptions in mind, make a few changes, and then...
It got reworked
You
a
know.
few times.
Yeah.
There was initially going to be Kislev and Cathay in it, and that
Yeah.
got removed. And it's been in the workshop for a while, but each time I believe it has been a complete rewrite. You wouldn't try and edit a couple things here and there.
Yeah.
You would have a much more comprehensive rule set if that was what happened.
Yeah.
What this feels like is a rule set that was written in 1 year or less with no QA testing at all.
I don't think that's true, but it definitely feels there's a big difference between not testing something and then seeing how it performs in the wild when you have tens of thousands of players
Absolutely.
who can really find the weak spots. However, that being said, there are some very egregious.
How does the Bow of Lorne and the Swift Shiver shards work?
Oh, that that part I'm over that now. In terms of egregious things, the decision to allow stackable ward saves or regen saves and armor saves on high toughness, high wound, high damage output,
High movement.
ridden monsters.
With value.
It basically, yeah, right. It basically
stomps.
means that the only downside of those the dragons that or the other T6 monsters that are valuable in that sort of role.
It's pretty much just dragons. But like
I'm pretty sure the Wyvern does okay. It doesn't have quite the
Byron's T5, isn't it?
no, I think it's T6 because it's a +1 toughness and the orc that rides it is T5. But it doesn't have the big thunder stomp. I don't think that's the big difference.
Yeah, but we can just talk about dragons for the rest of the section.
Sure. So the impact that dragons have is that if you don't take a dragon in an army that is capable of taking one, it is you're making a suboptimal choice.
Yeah.
Yep.
So now that what they've basically said by the rules that they have created, everybody should take a dragon.
Yep.
It's weird because you can't tell what is their intention behind this, because armies have, we'll say, things that break the rules a little bit, and that's meant to be their thing. Like, let's say the 5-up regen from the High Elves. Like, no other army gets something that is like that in addition to their other armor saves, etc. So that's obviously a thing that they get for free. The extra reroll thing every turn, a thing they get for free. For Chaos, they get their Chaos save, etc. It's just a thing for free they get. Is it by choice that the armies that get the really good dragons, like the best dragons, the Chaos Dragon and the Elf armies, do they have that because other parts of the army are shit, and therefore if you don't take the dragon, you're like even taxing yourself more than, say, an Orc army that doesn't take a Wyvern, or a Tomb King's army that doesn't take the Tomb King's dragon, whatever the hell it's called.
Tomb Kings are the one army I can see not taking a dragon in every list because they have so much other good stuff because the army is so blatantly overpowered.
Yeah, like you can see, say, Beastmen, they don't have a dragon, but people have been waxing lyrical about how they're such a good all-rounded army that it's like they're just like kind of like somewhere between A and B or something like that. They don't really need one because they're so evenly well pointed.
Beastmen use chariots instead of dragons.
Yeah.
I'll note that in the SBOT tournament, which is the biggest tournament where we have the most data from, none of the top 16 were Beastmen.
Yeah. Tomb Kings, I think, are also the only army where infantry is really viable because you have...
You can keep bringing them back.
Yeah, infinite infantry.
Yeah.
And they're unbreakable.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't run away, and you can bring them back.
They don't run away, therefore they do not care about fall back in good order. And you can bring them back, which means they do not care about anything.
Yeah.
God, Tomb Kings are just so fundamentally overpowered in this game.
Played with vampire counts, and one thing I actually don't like about the whole undead thing is the fact that they're missing psychology. It doesn't feel like you're actually playing a war game when there's no actual psychology involved. And I like undead armies; they look cool, but missing the psychology actually sucks. And I know it's a silly thing to not like, but yeah.
No, you're not the first to have said that. I think it's a pretty the game is designed around the ebb and flow of battle,
The story, the narrative on the table.
Well, I mean, you look at the problem is, if you think about undead from a realism quotes standpoint,
when all the zombies in real life actually go to fight.
yeah, it does make sense that they wouldn't run away. You just have to hack at them.
But the problem in Old World that is unique to Old World is they can come back so easily and so infinitely and so uncounterably that it doesn't feel like, even when you do win the combat hugely and do a whole bunch of damage with Crumble, that doesn't feel impactful because
there's no counterplay, as you said, right?
That's what it feels like playing Tomb Kings. I think on the dragon subject, the biggest thing for me is they should be expensive and they should be powerful, but points in themselves aren't just attacks. They're also kind of a benefit. Having a high points cost
because
unit,
of points kill points games.
Yeah, because if you've got 600 points locked up on a Chaos Dragon that has God knows how many wounds and how many saves, and all it's going to be doing is earning you interest on those points because it's going to be chewing through whatever your enemy feeds you. Like my Empire army, my knights are there solely to get eaten by dragons. They are knights with no banner. They have a champion and they have stubborn. So what happens is they get charged. The champion challenges the dragon. I get a turn, and then they fall back in good order because they've got stubborn, and then they die the next turn. And I have to have that in my army because there's nothing else except like illusion wizards that I have that can handle these dragons.
And even then, you're trading like 200 points to the dragon for free.
Yep.
Because it exists,
exactly.
and you can do nothing against it because you have to bring 12 cannons to kill the dragon.
Yes, it's super inefficient. Like I just have to sacrifice my army to it because there's nothing I can do about it, and so winning against a dragon is just a matter of how can I claw a win against this thing that I can't kill.
I played against Stephen Fay at the last Palooza, and he is a better player than me, but I still won because I brought a dragon that he was firing 2 cannons at it. He just couldn't kill the fucking thing. I charged it in. He couldn't shoot it anymore because it's in combat, and that's pretty much the be all and end all. It didn't feel like a victory. Probably felt bad for him to lose a game that he probably couldn't do much about, and that was kind of it. Like, fair play to him.
One of the biggest things that looked positive to me upon looking at Old World, but feels worse and worse the longer that I'm playing the game, is the massive nerf to cannons compared to 8th edition. In 8th edition, cannons did d6 plus 1 wounds on a hit. At strength 10, basically no saves. If they hit you, you take d6 plus 1 wounds if you don't ward it, and you can only get either ward or regen, so you get 1 save against d6 plus 1 wounds, which means that your ridden monster is going to die because they had split profile, so if it hits the dragon explodes. Now, the cannon is going up against 2 saves on something that it has to hit
Sometimes
3 or 4
3,
times.
yeah, it's usually 3. If it's not a great cannon, it'll be like a 5 up, and
assuming
then a 5
a
up,
great
and a 5 up. So it'll be 2 up, 5 up, 5 up, 5 up.
Yep.
How's there a 4th save?
2 up is to wound.
Oh, right, yeah, sure.
And then you got to roll to hit. Usually you will hit, and then you got a 5 up armor save or a 6 up armor
Well,
save.
hitting is only about a 3 up, even with the reroll.
Yeah.
Yep. So
The math is not great.
we
We've worked
did
it
it.
out.
The math is 12 cannon shots,
Yeah.
which is too many.
Well, 12 cannon hits.
No, 12 cannon shots.
shots.
No, I,
per
thought, I
wound.
thought it was 18. I thought it was
Yeah, it
18
was something
shots.
like
Oh, yeah, no. It was 18 shots, 12 hits, yeah.
Yeah, but that's great cannon, right?
That is great cannon.
Yeah, normal one is way higher. But what's interesting about cannons is they are the best thing in my army. Like, they are great. I've upset quite a lot of people by shooting off their favorite thing.
They can't be stronger without being unfun, but they can't
Yeah.
be weaker without making dragons incredibly dominant against Empire.
Yeah, so I think cannons in their role, they're pretty good still.
Leave cannons the way they are. Nerf the hell out of dragons, please. Because just buffing cannons will only fix the problem against one army.
I mean, I think there's two ways that we could. That we haven't talked about any solutions yet. Are there more things that we want to talk about?
We've been
grumbling in terms of positives, negatives.
Oh, I
about the game?
got a positive.
Yeah.
The arcane journals.
Yes.
Yeah, I really like them. Lore-wise, how much they add to each army. Like, if you look at dwarfs, they were kind of boring before their arcane journal came out, and then all of a sudden you've got the royal clans list, you've got the Slayer army, you've got the engineer stuff.
You have
got
Doom
these-
Seekers.
Yeah, you've got John Wick Thane. That's
And
like
the tunneling dwarves.
yeah, you got the miners. Yeah, so they added so much to that army with the one book. Same, I mean, to a lesser extent,
Ponies.
orcs and goblins. Even Finton, I know you don't like it, but I think the Empire Arcane Journal was pretty cool. There's like some fun stuff in there, like the magical items.
I haven't given my opinion on the Empire Arcane Journal publicly yet, but the Nuln army is awful, and the Knightly Orders army has messed up so much of the lore in ways that do not make sense for gameplay wise. Like, none of the Knightly Orders feel the way that they're written in the lore, and it hurts my soul after studying the Knightly Orders for like a month and writing my own expansion about them beforehand, and then just seeing them do it worse than I did, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So hard.
They're not great, but like there's some cool stuff in there. Like Road Wardens are cool. They're the General Hans Lowenthal.
Sure.
You know the guy I'm talking about, the mercenary guy. That's such a cool mechanic.
I do like that.
Even and the magical items are pretty sick.
I don't think they've ever had anything
Yeah.
that boosts mercenaries that way,
Yeah,
specifically that he does.
the mercenaries are interesting as a concept, but
But your point is very valid.
Yeah,
Just to go
Arcane
back to
Journals
the
are
main
cool.
arcane journals. I do really like those too. I like that it was Ravening Hordes, Forces of Fantasy, right from the get go. Go ahead and start playing your army,
Yep.
and then here's some extra flavor, some extra models. You could absolutely do more of those for the same armies, right?
Yep.
You could do an arcane journal that was about this war between dwarves and elves, and so there's some new dwarf units, some new elf units, new battle.
Yep.
this is what they
that sort of
did
thing.
in 4th edition 40k, correct me if I'm wrong, with things like Codex Battlezone Armageddon, etc. There was a whole bunch of small like campaign-focused books.
Eye of Terror.
Eye of Terror, which introduced like 3 or 4 new army lists that you could run with the same models, but that play very differently. Like the Cult of Speed, the Armageddon Orc Hunters,
The Gene Stealer cult.
the Gene Stealer cults, kind of. Well, they
Ultimate
existed
Council,
before.
I think. I think they also had loads of conversions as well, particularly for the Lost and Damned Army, which was great. Which they are actually bringing back for the Arcane Journals, which is really cool.
Back in my day, it wasn't my day, but everything was better. I'm living off other people's nostalgia with so much stuff these days.
Yeah, I think the arcane journals are definitely a highlight. But I think
They're better than codexes.
on the book side of things. It is a little disappointing that the books are they're all kind of sepia toned. There's very little in terms of new artwork.
Yeah.
It is the old world, and you can tell it's been built on a budget, right?
It doesn't look like the old books, though.
No,
The old books were colorful and had pictures of the models everywhere, and you had a full color section to look at everything. And you do have a color section in there, but it's very small because the book is very small.
I mean that for the Arcane Journal is true. Like the Forces of Fantasy, Ravening Hordes, they have the big section just like the old army books.
Yeah, and the main rulebook does have a big section, but it, even with just 9 armies, it feels like it goes over less stuff than the older books do, because the older books have insets with like take a look at this cool model and here's a little bit of flavor about it, and take a look at this cool model and here's a little flavor about it. Like
Yeah.
in the section on magic, you'd have like 15 different wizards on the magic rule pages just in the sidelines in the 8th
Yeah,
edition.
they used to have stuff like, this is the banner of this city, and this is just a footnote in the book. So if you want to build an army around this city that has no fluff behind it whatsoever, you can go ahead and do that.
Right. There was a
which is
lot
really
of
cool.
fluff hooks.
Yes.
Right. Where you could read it and go, oh, I'm really excited about that. Like
an RPG book, right?
Like an RPG book. Yeah. And, or, it was inspiring. Right.
And the same thing was so prominent in GW's writing style that they wrote 2 entire legions out of 40k so that way people could do that with their own Space Marines. Like, that is a core part of GW's writing, in my opinion. And that's not present in Old World. I don't know about AOS, but I don't think that's really present in AOS either. You can't make the whole your guys.
Yeah.
Maybe the closest thing might be, I think the legions of Azov are like, or however you pronounce it, they're like a specific legion for Chaos Dwarves, whereas beforehand it was just Chaos Dwarves. It's like the closest thing you could do is maybe make a different legion for Chaos Dwarves, but it's based on the same book, or PDF, I should say.
I have no idea. It does feel a little homogenized, I guess.
It's efficient for reading. It's very
It is,
efficient.
that's for sure.
If you're Control Fing a PDF to look for something, it's great. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of fixes, like what would we like to see? I'm going to start with one, and we can kind of go from there. So for me, I would like to see something that handles the stacked saves on these ridden monsters.
A suggestion that I came up with a couple months ago was any behemoth you're just not able to have multiple saves on. It's just
get the best one, maybe.
You just have either a ward or a regen. You can't have both.
I mean, that is one thing. You could just go back to ward or regen, not both. The other thing you could do is you could have regen cancelled by by flaming attacks, like we used to be.
For some fucking reason, their flaming attacks do less good for you than they do harm in Old World.
Yeah. You could have it that there's a number of ways that you could solve it. I actually, if you have a ridden dragon with no ward or regen, it's not that difficult to it's still hard, but it's not impossible to take it off the battlefield.
You just have to do a concerted effort to it. Whereas
if it has just one save, it's really challenging. And if it has 2, it's nigh impossible.
Yep.
Barring wild luck, or you have some very specific anti-dragon tech.
Or lots of time and rounds.
Yeah.
It may as well just be invulnerable unless you have Monster Slayer.
Yeah.
Right.
And even then it's lucky.
Right. It does come down to luck. Or, that other part of the meta that is defining in that you've got a 360-degree charge arc because your guy's on a Pegasus, right? So yeah, that's one thing that I would really like to see changed. A way to potentially change that, reduce the armor saves.
I would fix several things at the same time. Remove the initiative bonus for charging. That was stupid. I don't like it. Bring back step up. Probably tone down on all the different maneuvers you can do. I don't think drilled is actually a good idea. I think it slows down the game a bit. Looks cool. Doesn't really...
That's another thing that was missing in 8th edition was redress the ranks.
Yeah, you couldn't do that.
Nobody ever really changed the number of ranks wide you were in 8th edition outside of very like niche cases. So you could just bring one movement tray and you'd be fine. You wouldn't have to mess with your own models.
There are so many fucking models in this game. The amount of time it takes to just move one model at a time from the back to the front. It's...
Drilled was a rule written entirely thinking about gameplay and not thinking about,
how easy is it to actually move this many tiny fucking models on
Yeah.
a relatively small table.
Which is half of your game design for a board game is the practicality
When
of it.
some of them are metal, and if they chip, it's like, it's not very
Especially
practical.
with like aiming at having old metal models as your primary thing.
Yeah, like I really was like worried when I used a tape measure actually, and it was a metal model, and it was Keane's, and I accidentally tapped off one of his doors, and I think I chipped some paint. I was like, oh fuck, sorry man, sorry. And I'm going to blame that on Drilled because I can. I think that unit was using Drilled. It was not intentional, Keane. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that. Like, I think
You don't think it makes the game a little bit more difficult even to learn all the different maneuvers and all that?
Sure. I don't think that those are egregious problems.
I agree that they're not egregious.
That's a flavor style,
a nitpick.
a nitpick. Yes, it could probably be streamlined, sped up, that sort of thing. Having played an army where 2 of my units had Drilled, I moved them out, moved them in, moved them out, moved them in.
Well, I don't mean more so just Drilled. I mean like the amount of different maneuvers you can do.
Yeah, I like
open
the
order.
amount of maneuvers. I liked being able to turn, and then I liked being in marching column. But that's because I like games where I'm thinking about where are my ranks, where are my flanks, how am I getting to places. Like the maneuvers are, to me, the fun part of the game. You could probably simplify them.
Eighth had them simplified, and it worked just fine.
And I had just as much fun playing Eighth. So
because the other parts of the game were stronger.
Right. I don't think it's a problem that needs to be, like, if they solve that problem and none of the others.
The game.
Oh no,
be fine.
Yeah,
Jesus,
exactly.
no.
A thing that I would fix would be bring back power dice. Power dice were such an important part of making the game work. Power and dispel dice. In modern old world, you can cast every spell in your roster, you can dispel every spell in your roster, and you roll 2d6 every time and add your wizard level. This makes level 4s way too strong.
Yep.
And it makes level 1s incredibly useless. It makes choosing to dispel a spell automatic. Pretty much, if you're in range, you will dispel it.
Or you will attempt to.
You will attempt to dispel it. And it makes casting every spell, the only risk you take is I'm going to miscast maybe. And the miscast chart is not as punishing as it was previously.
Yep.
So you pretty much cast every spell every turn unless you don't have a target. If we brought back power dice, we could have a much better balance between level 1 and level 2, level 3, level 4 wizards.
So not everybody that's listening to this understands how power dice work.
That's true. So in 8th edition at least, you would roll 2d6, and then the player whose turn it was, they would get that many power dice, and the higher dice would determine how many dispel dice your opponent gets.
So if you rolled like a 6 and a 4, that meant you were getting 10 power dice for casting, and your opponent was getting 6 power dispel dice.
Are these meant to represent the winds of magic?
Yep,
changing?
exactly.
absolutely.
That's
right.
nice. I like that.
Well, so
Then after that,
Yep.
you would have channeling, which is where every wizard on the field rolls a d6, and on a 6 they get an additional dice to whatever pool you have.
yep, exactly right.
And there were loads of items that would buff your channeling, like you could channel twice in a turn, or you'd channel on a 5+, or all sorts of different things.
Yep. And there were also other things like the phoenixes in the High Elf army were attuned to the winds of magic.
They'd get a better ward save
So
if they were...
depending on what the highest dice was,
That's kinda
that
cool.
changed what happened to. And sometimes they got a debuff if it was a 1. Like if you rolled double 1s for the power dice, your
Phoenix,
Phoenix
it
got
was sick,
debuffed.
yeah.
Yeah, it was sick because there wasn't enough magic. Like I loved that sort of flavor. And yes, that is missing. But more importantly, it's the leveling and the choice of the spells and all of that.
Yeah,
Right? It's
so-
a very different magic system.
It was really hard to cast every one of your spells that you brought in 8th edition. You just, most of the time, couldn't do it. However, you did get a better choice of spells because when you roll a double in your spell selection, you got to pick. You didn't... Like, if you rolled 4 4s in 8th edition, you got to pick 3 of your spells.
Yep.
If you roll 4 4s in Old World, you're going to spend 5 minutes re-rolling.
Yeah.
And then you will probably not roll the spell you want anyway. Half the damn time.
Yep.
So that's a thing that helps. But in 8th edition, you had to pick your spells much more carefully in what you're going to cast each turn, and you had to pick what you were going to dispel much more carefully because you had such limited dispel resources.
Yep.
And that meant that bringing things like dispel scrolls was really, really important. So that way, if your opponent tries to cast Purple Sun near one of your big units, then you can properly allocate resources to get rid of that. Or if your opponent is just casting like Cascading Fire Cloak or something irrelevant, then you don't have to spend the resources to do that. Whereas in Old World, there's no reason not to pitch 2d6 at that.
Yep.
Which means that it feels terrible to have a low-level wizard in Old World where who's casting one not-so-great spell, because they just get dispelled every single time. Whereas in 8th edition, if you had one wizard casting a not-so-great spell, they'd generally save their dispel dice for your big wizard if you had a big wizard.
Yep. Or anticipating a bigger spell later on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you could also have the level 1 do the classic throw 6 dice at a spell, get it off, and then miscast.
Yes.
Which was an absolute classic thing you could do.
Right. And so if you look at the sort of the wizard meta today, it basically is take a level 4, at least one, and only take not a level 4 if there's a special character, or you literally there's some real reason why you can't,
like Aggro Swamp Digger,
or Elise Touchard,
or Tomb Kings in general, because they want more revives.
Right, Tomb Kings, exactly. Nobody else is really taking level 1s.
No.
And part of the reason for that, again, is that the signature spells are not well balanced across the lores, right? The signature spell for Illusion, for example, is pretty terrible.
It's got some uses.
But if that's the
The
only
signature spell for
you,
dark magic is awful.
if that's the only spell that you can take, right? Even the signature spell for battle magic is not great for a level 1 to take.
Yeah.
Right?
For most wizards to take.
Yeah.
Hammerhand, isn't it?
Hammerhand,
something?
it's an assailment.
The weird thing is, it's one of the few spells that it, like. Well, I suppose it has the most.
When Fireball's
actually
in the same lore and is an actually.
Let him finish.
I mean, like, it's only a 7-up, so like, aside from being an okay drink, it's like one of the spells that a level 1 actually could cast. You know, rather than randomly casting like something else, you know, or at least has the highest chance of casting.
But it's 2d3 strength 4 hits that is going to cost you a minimum of 70 points.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to get better results with a 70-point fighty character at that point.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
And when Fireball is in the same lore, and it has been a signature spell in every single edition, because Fireball is the magic spell in every single fantasy thing ever.
Right.
It's literally like the signature of fantasy as a genre is Fireball, and it's not the signature spell.
But this is Warhammer, so clearly you have to have hammer hands as your signature spell.
An entirely new spell that has never existed before in any form in any previous edition.
Yeah. So yes, I think the magic definitely does need some
complete reworking.
Some addressing.
Yeah.
I think it could be. Honestly, I think you could solve it in a couple of ways. Like another way that I've seen proposed to solve it is that you make your level 3 and 4s get a +2 to cast, and your level 1 and 2s get a +1 to cast.
That balances things way better.
Now, it may mean that now your Column of Crystal going off on an 11 is very difficult for anyone but Tomb Kings to cast.
Yeah.
And so, I think that sort of thing might help. But again, the imbalance of Tomb Kings, period, is very difficult to deal with.
How would you fix the undead regen stuff?
Make it a spell.
Make it a spell.
Make it so you can dispel it. Yeah, that
The
would
fact that it's on leadership and the only leadership debuffs are on undead makes it a stupid mechanic.
Well, it's also just that you can't even be in you can't do anything about it. But if it was a spell that you could cast, that you had to cast, then being able to dispel it so that they couldn't be brought back would now give you more of an opportunity to grind through that unit.
And also making it a spell that you can't cast with every single wizard with every single turn, which brings back a huge value of models,
right?
For insanely cheap investment, while also giving you a wizard.
Yeah.
Like the fact that the wizards can both cast their spells and revive things, and their revive is so powerful.
Yep.
Every single turn.
You can also, for vampire counts, kind of cheese it a little bit, and it's only a leadership test, right? So just take level 1s, and if you want to bring back a wound on a behemoth,
it's one no
always
matter
just
what.
one wound, no matter what. No difference. there needs to be some sort of balancing there, or just don't have it in the game. Something to fix it, just not what they have done.
In the past, it was Invocation of Nehek, which was a spell you cast,
Yeah,
which
it
means you
should
could
be.
dispel it.
It really should be.
Which I think honestly would probably solve half the problem.
Yep.
But again, with Mortuary Cult, okay, I'm gonna sacrifice the swarm that's in front of me to cast this spell on my Ushabti over there.
Or my Tomb Guard.
Yeah. I mean, at least eventually that resource would run out, potentially.
Yeah, and that's an actual thing you have to spend it on, because what happens right now is they sacrifice the Tomb Swarms to cast all their big spells in their magic phase.
And then just say, arise!
One guy arises the Tomb Swarms, and they get back
the way
all
full
of them.
back. Yeah.
Because swarms heal the same rate.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that magic is off. The saves on the are off, and these things really affect how the meta is. And this is my third and my final and probably largest gripe, is that the balance of how things are pointed versus what they can do on the battlefield is off way more than I feel like it has been in other editions.
To the point where you have no build variety between factions.
Exactly.
If you're fighting a certain...
or limited build variety. There are some
Right.
factions that have equally good builds, but there are also some units that are obviously untenable on the battlefield for the points that you pay.
Flagellants.
Flagellants.
Yeah.
Hey, they'll kill any dragon you put them in.
Yeah.
Minotaurs, they'll cut the dragons
They're
in
like,
half.
They're like 12 points a model or something.
They're a
like
stupid
that.
number.
dumb.
Yeah.
And then they just gave Warriors of Chaos a better version of them
Yeah.
with skirmishers.
So I think the some of the expensive things are too expensive for what they do. Looking at the Arachnarok, for example, some of the
The Arachnarok's only bad because you can't stack saves on it. Compared to another big monster that you could stack saves on, the Arachnarok. Like, if you take away the ability to have ward saves and regen saves on monsters as a whole, the Arachnarok's not too bad.
It's pretty, yeah, I'd take it then, I think.
right.
It's still expensive.
It's very expensive. It's 310 points compared to a dragon.
You're going to be spending 500 points on it, and it won't provide you the same value as a dragon right now,
Right.
Yep.
even though it costs the same.
It costs more.
More, yeah.
Right. I think there are some things like that. There are some weird army restrictions, more so in the legacy lists than
Lizardmen who have to build in the world's weirdest ways. The legacy lists are a whole other thing.
They're a whole other thing. But my biggest complaint is that if I go to a tournament and I want to win the tournament, I have to bring a list that is going to survive being hit by dragons and is going to be able to survive playing against Tomb Kings. And realistically, if I'm not also bringing a dragon or I'm not also bringing Tomb Kings, my options are small units that run away and minimize points
Poison.
and try and pick up points off of their chaff. And that to me is a really boring gaming experience and when I want a rank and flank game.
Yep.
So once they fix that, I will come roaring right back.
What do you think about like the because there's proportionality of ward saves, right? Like no one's taking a guy on foot and giving him a talisman of protection because he's only got 2 wounds. He's not going to do much damage.
Well,
but if you take a guy on a dragon,
yeah,
you're obviously giving
getting
him
so
because
much
you get that 5 up ward save on all 9 of their wounds.
At
then you
T6.
get and you get the compounding, I guess, compounding benefit, of having all the other ward saves at the same time. But it costs the same amount of points,
yeah,
which
so
doesn't make sense.
in prior editions, I'm thinking particularly of 40k, they had things where you would spend 10 points on this per wound of a model. So if you wanted to put it on, in second edition 40k, there was a regenerate mutation you could give your Tyranids. If you wanted to put this on a Tyranid warrior, it would cost you 30 points per model. If you put this on a Hive Tower, it costs you 60 points. If you put this on a Carnifex, it costs you 10 points. 100 points.
Yeah.
Because this basically allows them to regenerate all their wounds throughout the game and come back from the dead unless they die really, really hard. It was definitely worth 100 points, but it was 100 points you're not spending on something else. if the Talisman of Protection scaled up per wound on your guy, like 5 points per wound or whatever, you're getting a 10-point ward save on a 2-wound guy, which isn't bad at all. And then you're getting most of your magic item, like half your magic item allowance on a ward save for a dragon, which really reduces the amount of stuff you can do with it, which is a big deal.
I might be kicking myself for even suggesting this, but would data cards from current 40k suit that better? Because then you would have a whole a unit entry for
too many options.
Guy on the dragon, Dreadlord on a dragon, Dreadlord on a cold one, Dreadlord on foot, Dreadlord on dark steed, different points value. That's
so in 40k. There are about like 5 options at the most for whatever given unit.
That's why I'm thinking like how
I would hate that.
Yeah.
I'm just going to categorically say no.
In Old World, part of the fun...
I don't hate you, Mark, for saying it, but no, I would hate that.
In Old World, part of the fun of building a character is that you have 500 options for magic items, and data cards don't let you do that.
You know what? That's actually an interesting point that I had forgotten about. You have 500 options for magic items, but only 2 are good, because a great weapon is better than pretty much every magic weapon in the game.
Which is stupid.
That is very stupid. Or it feels bad. Stupid, whatever. It just feels bad.
A 6-point Grey Oven being better than a 30-point magic item is stupid.
Yeah.
I'm happy saying that.
Yeah. I think, the way that magic items are handed out to characters kind of could be used as a way to change a lot of these problems. If we think back to 8th, like 8th had a ton of problems. I don't want it to feel like it's this rosy, great addition. It certainly wasn't.
Sure.
It was a fun game.
It was fun.
But it was very unbalanced.
It was unbalanced. And then the community kind of rallied around to create balancing mechanisms. And the one that was used most at kind of like the high-level tournaments was the Swedish comp, as it was called. And what they did, which I thought was really clever, is they penalized the things that were the power builds. So if you wanted to take a Talisman of Protection, and let's apply this to Old World, right? If you wanted to take a Talisman of Protection on your 3-wound guy on foot, there was no penalty. If you wanted to take it on your 9-wound dragon, that's a big penalty.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
What exactly is the penalty?
So the way that the system works was the downside of Swedish is that it was complicated. So you started with every army started with 300 points, and every penalty dropped that points value. And so anything you took, literally everything you took in your army pretty much was a negative number on that points value. And if you duplicated very powerful choices,
like Double Dragon or whatever.
Or you took, or you stacked saves on things, or the sorts of things where we're like, okay, if you didn't stack the save, that would be okay.
Mr. Disclord with a 3 upward save rerolling 1s.
Right. But let's. I'm going to stick with Old World examples.
Yeah, sorry.
If you took, let's say you took a Star Dragon, which is the toughest dragon. Well, that might be minus 20 points. If you took a Star Dragon with a 5 upward save, the 5 upward save might also, on the Star Dragon, that would be an extra minus 20 points. And then if you also took the Seed of Rebirth, that would be a further minus 20 points. So that just taking that big dragon with the 2 ward saves is like minus 60 points. And of those 300, you had to end up being somewhere between 0 and 200 at the end of your build. And you would divide the final number by 10. So let's say you've spent, of those 300, you get all the way down to 100 points. You divide that by 10. Now you've got a score of 10.0. That's how tough your army is. So versus a 5.0 army, a 5.0 army would obviously have had a greater penalty. It would be a much tougher army than yours, but a 15.0 would be a less tough army. And so it was designed to work with the 20 nil system, so that the difference in numbers between your two armies could be applied to your battle score.
I see.
Right. So if I'm playing with a 15 point, or if I'm playing with a 15 score army, and Ben, you've got a 5 score army, I'm getting plus 10 to my battle score at the end of the game because.
So after table, you really basically.
You have to really beat me to win. And so what that would end up meaning is your tournament would say, okay, we're playing with scores between 5 and 15. And if you're taking a 5 army, you're going to be really strong. But if you're finding anybody who isn't anywhere near as strong as you, you're going to have to hit them really, really hard. And so it gave you another dimension of, well, I'm going to take a softer army.
I would totally run away and play a soft army and run away.
That would entirely be your play style, man. I totally get that.
I'm already thinking it.
But people bringing softer armies would make the game more fun.
Well, and in actual fact, in some cases, some units were so rarely taken because they were so bad that you would get positive points for bringing them.
What was an example of that? I don't remember anything like that.
I can't think of any off the top of my head.
Would it be like Beastman stuff from 8th? Right.
A lot of Bretonia stuff, I think.
Yeah, it was more that the Bretonia stuff didn't get heavily penalized.
Yeah.
Right? And so it was easy to bring a Bretonian army because a lot of that army kind of struggled in the first place.
I think some of the magic items gave you positive stuff, like some of the 100-point items that did nothing for you.
Yeah.
Like Fozzer's Foldering Fortress.
Actually make the worst army possible so you automatically win.
Right.
That's why you do 15, not 20.
Right. And that's why, you start up at this sort of 300. But there was no way to build a 2,500 point list, like a Warhammer points. There was no way to build that sort of size of list and not be somewhere in the teens, right? Because even just taking your core, all of your core models gave you a penalty. But
the really good core models gave you a bigger one.
And the larger the unit you took might give you more of a penalty.
Mr. 170 models in a core unit with poison on it.
Right. And it also made some things impossible to take. So for example, I liked Hell Pit Abominations. They were very, very good in 8th edition. If you took 2 Hell Pit Abominations in a Swedish list, it meant that you couldn't take a level 4 wizard.
That's cool.
Right at that point, it was like, okay, you might have the points for it in your army list,
but that's cheating, sir.
But you'll be below a 0 or whatever, right? And so some tournaments would give a range. Other tournaments would say you can bring whatever you want. You must calculate your score. If you're below a 5, you are not eligible to win Best General. So you might go ahead and rampage all over other people's games, but you're not taking home any trophies.
I won all my games and came last.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, okay, this means that people all get to have fun in the way that they enjoy the hobby. And the downside of Swedish, there were 2 big downsides.
It's complicated.
One is it was complicated. And the second one is it took a lot of work to maintain. And
you had to keep up with the meta, which is hard to do. Right.
And the communities were much larger and more established back then, obviously. Yeah. And it was called Swedish Comp because literally the Swedish meta used it to kind of keep their tournaments kind of running smoothly.
So it's kind of it's an issue with tabletop games as a whole when you compare it to other games, being that one, as a game designer, you don't have access to the library of data that you would if you were building like
a video game,
right?
Yep.
So you can't see how everything interacts with each other. All you can see is the results of a game, or you can play test it and use those as examples. So it's almost like it's going to be a lot harder to have a balanced version of the game. My take is that if you're building a modern tabletop game and you want it to balance, you sort of need a living rule book.
Yes, you do.
Where you can have patch updates.
And I also think you need an app for the community, because if we all had an app, and this was actually my super secret plan that I was going to create a tabletop war game and build this. So it's probably never going to happen. But if I was going to build a war game, the app would be both the army builder, and you would be able to build all your armies in it, and it would be free. And it would also allow you to organize your tournaments. And it would check all of the lists for validity automatically. And, as you being a tournament organizer, or even just here's our 4 guys getting together to play Warhammer for the evening, it would take care of all of that sort of stuff for you, so that you would get all of the data to see, okay, now I can see what people are putting in their armies and what they're not putting in their armies.
Yeah,
and
that's really good.
That then tells you that these are clearly the strong meta choices, because that's how everybody's playing it. And these are a weak meta choice. So what can we do to introduce balance? Change the point cost of these guys, drop it down, give them a new special rule, change the point cost of these guys that everybody's taking, make them more expensive, that sort of thing. Right?
Yeah.
So the thing about this, though, GW will never do this. They do not care about balance. They do not care about competitive scene at all.
They just want to sell toy soldiers.
Yeah.
And paper. That's the other thing.
Well, they don't care about the paper. Honestly, the fraction of money that they make from the rules is tiny compared to how much they make in
on just Space Marines.
War dollies and the accoutrement that go with them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is actually understanding that about the company, and as much fun as I've had in the year, I know that these issues are never going to be addressed.
Unless the community does something about them.
The community might address them. It's certainly not going to happen this year, because we're going to wait for all the arcane journals to come out and see what happens after that.
I think the biggest thing about it is that the community doesn't have the motivation or the need to do this that I feel like we have. In most cases, people are fairly happy with this game, I think. Enough to continue playing it. And like when we have brought up these kinds of changes in the past, people have been fairly against them because they like their bring a dragon and win game in a lot of cases. And introducing a comp or whatever would just add an extra layer of unfun and difficulty to play to tournaments that a lot of people don't like.
And disagreement, right?
Yeah.
Right. Another thing to disagree over.
Yeah. But we're already seeing that there is, kind of Games Workshop has already comped the game for their tournaments. They already have a rule of 3. You can't bring more than 3 of the same unit. Now they've added this. You can't bring any character that costs more than 25% of the army.
Yep.
1
level 4.
Right. 1 level 4, stuff like that. Right. So
in my opinion, it's not enough.
It's definitely not enough. But what I'm saying is that Games Workshop has even recognized that they need to have house rules. I think that I have 2 choices looking at this purely objectively. I can walk away and not play until somebody fixes it, or I can be the one who fixes it. And I am too old and too cranky to be the one who fixes it. I've done that before, right? I've been involved. I was involved in helping out with the Swedish comp from time to time.
And look where it got you.
And look where it got me. Now we got the fucking end times is where it got me.
Don't do it again. It'll kill this game too.
Exactly. As soon as I try to help,
it'll turn into the new times. Oh no.
The start times. We go back to first edition fantasy.
Yeah. I mean, look to sort of put an end. I will still keep playing this game. I don't know if you're on the same bucket as me, Mark. I know AJ and Finton aren't as keen as playing it. I'm playing it in the future. I will still keep playing it. I'll probably go to tournaments if someone else locally is going. I'll happily, when my friends come over, I will set up the table, teach them how to play Old World, because it's fun. I think if you look at the value of the game, I would see the value of playing Warhammer like 30% the game and 70% the people and the social experience, right? It's kind of like D&D is really cool, but I don't care that much about my int. Yeah. I'm there to meet people and hang out and look at cool armies and have fun moments. And the game, for all its flaws, you still do get those fun moments and you still get storytelling in the throes of battle. So it's good enough for me, and I like the world. So
it's also the whole hobby aspect of it. Like, there's a lot of fun to be found for many, many people in just painting and building an army.
It's I've heard people describe RPGs before as frameworks for whatever you want to use it for, chiefly fun. And that's what I'll be using the old word for. We can at least see, because we know what is overpowered, what an overpowered list will look like. Dragons usually. So if you want to have fun, if you give a shit about your friends who you're playing, don't bring dragons unless
Or
they're
Tomb
bringing them
Kings.
to.
Yeah.
Or Tomb Kings.
Yeah, just don't
Which
play Tomb
sucks because they're one of the starter armies.
Unless you're building like just horse archers. And
Horse archers aren't even bad though. Like the worst thing in Tomb Kings is better than the best thing in a lot of armies.
Look,
Yeah.
I don't think I will stop playing the game. Like if you text me and say, "Hey, do you want to play Old World?" I'm like, "Yes, I do. I will come and play."
Yeah.
Because hanging out and playing toy soldiers with my buddies is fun.
Beer and Pretzels Warhammer is what Warhammer is designed to be.
Right, exactly. I think I'll probably pick up go to the Paloozas or those sorts of things. Something where the part of the difficulty is that there's a lot of travel involved just because of where we are in the country to go to these events. And if the event is a tournament, I'm not as enthused to go to it as I was a year ago.
Yeah.
If it is, let's all get together and play some games, and then it'll be literally just a case of how far away is it and can I afford the time on that day?
Yeah.
So I'm not saying I'm done with Warhammer. I'm washing my hands and walking away.
Bad game.
Right, exactly. What I am saying is, there is a bit of effort in producing the podcast. There's a decent amount of effort needed to go to these tournaments. I'm not prepared to put that effort in because I don't get the buzz from it that I want to make it worthwhile.
Yeah. And that's fair. Hey, we had a good run.
We had a good run,
Yeah.
And I've really enjoyed, doing this with you guys and going to the events and that sort of thing. But until the meta changes, I would rather spend my gaming time doing other things.
Like what are you gonna do instead? Have you two thought about that?
40k.
40?
No, God, no.
God, no, for sure.
There are Helldrakes in 40k.
What's that? Something near a dragon? Get out of here.
And it's made of hell.
Well, I think there's two things. Finton and I have actually been designing a war game, and we're pretty far on with it. We're going to be playtesting that and see how we get along with that. That's one thing. And the second thing is I miss our regular role playing group. Right, I miss playing every week and telling stories with characters.
Yeah.
In the Warhammer universe.
Even in the Warhammer
Like-
world, right? Whether it's that or whether it's Tolkien or D&D or freaking, I don't care.
We spent like 2 years playing that Warfare campaign, didn't we? Or
Yeah, at least
better
a
part
year
of-
It
anyway.
was just over a year, I think.
Yeah.
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 And
I think I had more fun in that year than I did playing Old World.
right, and that's really what it comes down to. I have a limited amount of hours for my hobbies, and I want to maximize the shit out of them. And at the moment, the reward for playing and being part of the Old World community is not as much as it was when we were just role playing every week instead.
Yep. This is all one. This whole thing has been one massive ad for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. Cubicle 7, shout out. Oh, expect our check in the morning. They're based in Dublin, I think. Yeah.
We love you.
Use our checkout code coupon for 25. No.
Use code FRANK.
Oh,
All right, men. Rank up. We'll charge him in the flanks.
yeah, I don't know how we can top that, so maybe we should wrap it up.
That's probably a good plan.
Yeah.
All right. Well, look, thanks very much to everybody who has listened and who has joined the Discord. The Discord will continue because that is a zero maintenance effort for us. The website will continue because I just had to pay to renew the domain about a week ago, so we'll keep that for another year at least.
Yep.
It has some blog articles. If you want to write blog articles, come on the Discord and I'll happily give you access to write an article.
If you want to join the Discord, it can be found at rankandflank.com/Discord.
Yep, and if you want to come and tell us why we're so wrong about leaving or how you've got this great idea of how to save the old world, I'd love to hear it. Love to hear it.
Until then, I think this is Rank and Flank signing off. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Good luck, folks.
See ya.